Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I am joined by Keren Eldad. A thought leader in the coaching world, Keren specializes in taking high achievers out of the futility of constant pursuit and into the greatest levels of success and fulfillment they've ever seen. Her coaching clients include Olympic athletes, politicians, Hollywood stars, supermodels, special forces operatives, and serial entrepreneurs, as well as renowned global organizations such as Estee Lauder, JP Morgan, and Nike. She's also the founder of The Club, a community of leaders, entrepreneurs, and coaches who encourage and support each other to reach their fullest potential and make their greatest contribution. Recognized as a top 10 executive coach by the International Coaching Federation, Real Leaders Magazine, and Goop, Keren maintains gold standard coaching credentials on top of her advanced academic degrees from the London School of Economics and the University of Jerusalem. She is a former C-suite executive who has lived and worked in 17 countries on 4 continents. And she will talk in this episode about how that is not everything that she thought it would be or hoped or did not provide all the happiness that she thought it would provide. And now Keren coaches leaders all around the globe in 4 languages. With 500,000 views of her TEDx talks and speaking engagements all over the world, Keren's message seems to transcend borders. She is the author of the recently released book, Gilded, and that is really what we talk about in this conversation. It's how do we break free of the cage of ambition, perfectionism, and the relentless pursuit of more. And we get into not just how do we chill out, but how do we continue to be high achievers? How do we continue to accumulate successes, but in a way that feels authentic, that is not status seeking in an unhealthy way, that is not comparison based, and that does not just continue to add pressure with every new achievement. Tons of stuff in here. She talks a lot about leaders and entrepreneurs and that kind of a thing. It's not just for those people. It's for anybody who wants to get their head on right about their career, about their way they parent, about their relationships, any way that they want to be successful. Really had fun unpacking this one. I think you will enjoy it as well. Here is Keren Eldad. Keren, welcome to the show. This would be an interesting conversation. As I was going through your new book, Gilded, which is out now for people who are listening, there was a lot of stuff that resonated, and there was a lot of stuff where I was like, oh, I want to dive in and explore that more. So welcome to the show. And just to kick things off, if you could explain how you came to do the work that you do today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I came to do the work the way that so many, I think, teachers come to do the work. I went through the ringer and I came out the other side. And when you come out the other side of real suffering, I think you just want to take everybody with you. The mission will express itself the way it'll express itself, but we all kind of want to reach back and say, can I save you some time here? And so Gilded was essentially my breaking free of the golden cage, the gilded cage, that so many of us executives and founders and high achievers find ourselves trapped in, essentially caged in by our own achievement, by our own obsession and relentless pursuit of achievement, and how I broke free. And the story, as you know, is a kind of a sad story, but it ends really, really well, so don't worry about it. And once I started to realize what happened on the other side, which revealed to me how much I was missing before, that's what I wanted to go back and tell everybody else. That's the nutshell of the story. If you'd like, I'll take you back to 2012 in Zurich, sobbing in a shower.
Sure.
The come to Jesus moment.
Well, let's go deep real quick.
Let's go back there. All right. Well, I've been an overachiever all my life, really like a classic overachiever. Most people who don't identify as an overachiever should know that the way I look at it is intensely focused or obsessively focused, particularly in the direction of work and career. However, it is not only that. There are overachieving parents. There is such a thing as an obsessive, physical obsessive, right? Like people who are gym rats or nutritional obsessives, et cetera, et cetera. We essentially have that obsessive glitch in one particular direction. We usually come with ambition, perfectionism, and a relentless pursuit of something. So if If that resonates with you, welcome to the overachieving category. I was a classical overachiever in the sense that I always achieved above and beyond the norm. In other words, I was obsessively a good student. I wasn't just a straight A student. I had to be a straight A student. Luckily, God gifted me with zero athletic ability. So that I was spared from. But I bet you I would have gone really hard in that direction too if I had been blessed with any athletic ability whatsoever. Essentially, almost anything I did, I dove headfirst into. And I then started to go after the social rankings as well, right? Just like everybody else, I wanted to get married to a tall man. I wanted to have the prestigious career. I wanted to have all of the decorated awards, first as an Army officer, and then in my first degree and my second degree in the fancy schools, et cetera, et cetera. So I do everything in a really linear fashion. By the time I'm 31, I think I've got it made. I've got the C-suite job. I'm married to the tall guy. Looks really, really good on Instagram. I've gotten the degrees. I've done everything right. Why am I miserable? And this is when everything starts to crash around me. I like to tell people that depression is not at all self-indulgent, and many times it's just awakening to what you've been numbing for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
This low-grade anxiety, this aimlessness, this restlessness had been in me for quite some time. I was frankly exhausted. I'd worn myself out by the age of 31, which I don't mind telling you was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And here I am in the shower in the most beautiful house I've ever lived in my life, sobbing. And all I could think of, and this is a trigger warning, but I like to normalize this, really thinking my only way out was suicide. And luckily in that shower, while listening to ABBA's only sad song, My Love, My Life, you know when one of those moments where you remember everything that happened in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
I remember just coming to, getting out of the shower, and I only had one thought. I didn't know where it was going to go next, which was, this ends now. It ends now.
Yeah.
We're done with this. And from that moment, I mean, essentially you could say I took a blowtorch to my life. I quit the job, divorced the guy. All of this is very, very summarized so that I can spare you the horrific details.
Yeah.
Moved
It
back
is
to
all
New
in the
York.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved back to New York. I spent 5 months or 6 months looking for a job. I couldn't find a job for a really long time, which was very disheartening. Basically, my ego is breaking down again and again. Then I lost all my things in a fire.
Oh, geez.
And then both of my cats died within 2 weeks of each other. So this is the most miserable 6 months ever. Now, I'm actually lucky that happened to me, even though it was truly horrific. Because what overachievers do when tragedy befalls them or when really, really big challenges come their way is they spring right into action. But for anybody who's ever been through grief, you know, grief brings you to your knees. You can't move anymore. And from the second that happened, when the cats died, I couldn't move anymore. All I could do was watch Frasier reruns. Best show ever. Until I was okay again. And this is when I start reaching for what I had deemed unacceptable before. Coaching. The world of Tony Robbins. The books of Stephen R. Covey. I essentially start to go through them one by one. And my mindset changed. Then I started hiring coaches, which I also thought was insane. And then my whole life changed. And that's when I decided that this is what I wanted to do for everybody else too.
Yeah. There's so much, I mean, I was going to say there's so much good stuff in there, but there's so much tragedy in there. But, often it's through that gauntlet that we forge the strengths that we have as well. So, there can be, and there often is good that comes from that tragedy. Let's unpack pieces of that and kind of start to make it relevant for the listeners here who are listening to. First of all, you are very upfront about saying I'm an overachiever.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I had a reaction to that. Not to you saying it, but to thinking about me saying it.
Of course. A lot of people do.
Why does overachievement get a bad rap? Why are we so hesitant to say yeah, I'm an achiever?
That automatically attracts alienation and resentment. That's why. It's not societally acceptable to brag, but I'm not bragging. I'm literally talking about this as a glitch in my system.
Yeah.
I don't think that this is something that, I mean, it's just, you're born that way. And by the way, as a person who uses DISC behavioral assessments for a living, you are born this way. There are people on the side of the spectrum, the high D, the high I, the IS in some cases, if the I is very, very out of control, the C, if it's very out of control, those are high achieving people. They're usually going to be a little bit obsessive or a little bit conditioned towards their limitations. And that is just a control glitch. And if it's out of control, sadly, you too will spiral into chaos or into a form of chaos. You'll start to miss the mark on happiness. That's the real glitch here, is that you'll overemphasize the targets in life that are designed to go after status, power, acquisition, and money, and essentially start to ignore the parts of yourself that make you feel alive. That's what I mean by overachiever. And I think many people, when you really break it down for them, can identify this way. In my case, it was just very classic. I was a nerd. So it's it's pretty obvious where your category is when that's just your default, right? You work too hard.
So what is the difference then between healthy achievement and unhealthy achievement? Where's that line?
Thank you for asking. It's the difference between high standards and perfectionism. The difference is very simple. High standards are wonderful. Perfectionism hurts. Perfectionism is punishing. It comes with very harsh self-talk. If you miss a goal or a standard, you beat the crap out of yourself. You tend to also take it out on other people in terms of jealousy or resentment or just picking fights. This is a natural distinction between perfectionism and overachievement or classical high standards, which are just fun, honestly. Does that make sense?
It does. And I like what you said. I want to go back to one thing you said there, and I don't want to let it go, is what I heard you say is that achievement becomes a problem when it is chasing status.
Yes.
I just want to underscore that point. Have you read the book, The Status Game?
No, I must read it once. Who wrote it?
So I'm terrible with authors' names, but it's a great book. And the whole premise, I had listened to the author speak on a podcast, and the whole premise is that we are all seeking status all the time. And I was like, I don't know that that's true. I don't know that I'm seeking status all the time. And then I read the book and I was like, oh no, it's very true. We are all seeking status all the time.
We're hierarchical animals and we're social animals. So we're essentially just trying to be very well socialized. There's nothing wrong with just understanding what you are.
And I think we think of status, when we say the word status, we think money, fame.
Of course.
But status is just how we rank ourselves among a group of people. Yeah. What values, how we rank in a value system. In the money value system, it's how much money do you have. In the fame value system, it's how many people know and adore you. In, the mating values, status game, it's how many mates you attract. Yes. But there are all other kinds of games that you can play with status. True. So when I was reading your book, I was like that. I was just thinking about status all the time. And I'm curious how you think about shifting status games. And like maybe start with you. Like you had this sort of breakdown, you hit rock bottom. How did you start to shift the status games that you were playing? Because you did it very, very starkly, right? You were playing one game, you're like, I'm giving up that game, I'm starting a new game. That's very hard for people. So how did you start to process that transition?
Oh, I got really lucky, O'Brien. You talked about this with your coach in one of my favorite episodes of your show. There are two ways to come to enlightenment. One of them is coaching. I highly recommend it. It's easier and it's fun. The other is trauma.
Yeah.
Suffering.
Coaching's definitely more fun than that. Yeah.
Yes. I don't recommend trauma. My book ends with a chapter, I don't mind revealing it to everybody, called Pray for a Shitstorm. Really, really start to brace yourself. Suffering brings enlightenment. It's horrific, but it will always break you down and it will bring you to the other side. Always. Grief is for a season in almost every case. My trajectory was that way. First, I want to address the status thing. You're absolutely right on the money. There's a reason why there's a gilded cage on the cover. It's literally a gilded cage. I originally wanted to call the book, it was too long a title, but Why Your Life Sucks and feels so different from what it looks like on Instagram. It's just a status game. You're absolutely right that this is categorical. That's why I distinguished overachieving for people. There are people who, for example, highly value aesthetics. They really want to be the most beautiful or appear to have the most beautiful taste. This is still a status game. It's still a status game. Highly theoretical people want to be the most academically knowledgeable, the most sound, the most vocabulary heavy. Frasier comes to mind. That is still a status game. And that's because we're social animals. By the time we are 7 years old, because we depend on people to live, we are listening and paying attention to them. They're telling us whether we're good or we're bad. They're telling us where we stand in the ranking. And we absorb that. We absorb that well before we're in any shape or form able to contest that or counter that with any narrative that is about our own worth and that comes from ourselves. That takes a lot of work to undo, but it's really work that you should do. Don't be afraid of the fact that you will have to break things down. In my career, I coach a lot of executives and a lot of founders, and they generally speaking come at the same stage that I was in life, not the same level of trauma, sometimes more, sometimes less. But usually, almost always, it's the same thing. I've been climbing a ladder for XYZ amount of time, and I'm starting to think it's up the wrong wall. Now, that's actually not always accurate. It just feels that way because the targets have gotten screwy. Those of us like you and me who are business founders, all of us, we started businesses to become more free. All of us. That's the premise. I want to control my own life. I want autonomy. I want success on my own terms, right? And I want no ceiling on that success. Mm-hmm. How fast can that slip into too much?
Oh, yeah.
Aggression, competition.
Well, the no cap becomes the thing, because then that machine can just spin out of control because there's always more, there's always more, there's always more, there's always more. You have to work through that.
What's next?
What that means to you.
What's next? And I always say, as long as you're operating from obligation, you are a slave.
Yeah.
I did not start this to become more of a slave. And the reason I know that is because I broke apart. And when I did, I decided that my real job in life is to not become somebody, is to become nobody.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
My job in life, I'm a huge Ram Dass fan. I remember reading his book, Becoming Nobody, and starting to understand that really it's to remove the layers of ego that are standing between me and the understanding that we are all alike, that we are all the same, that this is all just a simulation that is screwing everything up and that is destroying the essence of what we really are. We are loving creatures. Most of us truly are, unless you have, actual disorders like sociopathy. And that's very few people, thankfully. Most of us came here to love and be loved. To share our gifts is very different from to force our gifts. And then you start to move into a universe that really depends on inspiration rather than on motivation. It comes from within, not from external forces.
Yeah.
And the entanglement from external forces in my case was much easier because I didn't have anything left to lose, O'Brien. Everything was gone.
Yeah.
It was over. And my friends weren't looking at me the same way because basically I've just overnight turned into just a completely different thing. And to so many people, a failure. So I have nothing to lose anymore. For other people, I say go willingly and destroy at least the structures that are not functioning for you, because you will find on the other side that you've actually not lost anything. You've only gained.
Yeah.
Who you really are.
So I agree with everything that you said there. I also know that there's a group out there, there's a voice in people's heads that's like, if I let this go completely, then I'm going to have no money. I'm going to have no family. I'm not like, I'm going to have no status.
Yes, exactly.
And I want to, there's nothing wrong with achieving. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with having a great family or a hot spouse or whatever. Yeah. So how do you coach people to start to let these things go without losing the edge and the natural sort of achiever that they are?
Well, they're going to have to take my word for it, that the premise is flawed. The understanding, the binary thinking is what's tripping people up. It's making it all or nothing. In other words, if I don't play the game this way, and by the way, that's why the workaholism bug, the over-obsession bug, is the biggest hurdle for overachievers. And that's what Gilded is trying to do. If you think about 12 lessons, I think, or 12 traditions. Yeah, 12 lessons, 12 traditions being the manual for Alcoholics Anonymous. I like to think of Gilded as the manual for Workaholics Anonymous. The trade-off is actually completely different. You become much more successful. and much, much happier as well. In other words, you get the achievements plus the happiness. What happens, believe it or not, O'Brien, the ego doesn't die. I still have one. She lives with me. I call her Susan. We're very, very familiar with each other by now. It's just that I know how to manage her now. I know when she's talking. I understand who she is. I've completely redesigned my relationship with her. I see her as a friend rather than as a destroyer. So I really have a very, very different command of self. And as a result of that, I can still achieve, but my achievements are no longer hurting me and they're no longer running my life. And for the record, my husband is way hotter now. You can still have pretty much everything that you want. You're just going to have a very different relationship to it. It's not going to command your life anymore. And because it doesn't command your life, I want to promise anybody who's ready to go on the inner journey, you'll actually have a lot more. And by the way, you'll also allow yourself, let's talk about founders for a second. You'll allow yourself to scale. Most people stay stuck in ruts and hit ceilings in business because they won't let go of the control and of the way that they do things. It's only when you start to take your foot off the pedal that you really start to grow, right?
Well, and it's not just founders too, right? It's like anybody can scale their life, right? It's you could think about scaling a business, but you can also scale your career. You can scale your personal life. You can let that bloom and blossom into something more than it is today. And there, often what got you here is not going to be what gets you there. No. And there does need to be a transformation and a letting go of certain things and an acceptance of other things to continue to evolve.
I think no brighter words have ever been spoken than the title of the book by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, 10X is easier than 2X. That's literally the name of the game. It sounds counterintuitive, but the minute you let go of what you're doing, the vast possibilities of what is available to you start to become apparent, and you willingly go.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention here when it comes to status, this isn't a question. It's just something I saw the other day. I read Morgan Housel, who's a blogger and an author, and love the way he thinks and communicates.
Yeah.
And I heard him talking about billionaires and why billionaires stay so competitive and stay in the game. It's because you'd think, well, you've won the status game, right? Like you're at the tip of the iceberg. But the problem is that when you win one status game, you look around and you see other status games and you see other people beating you in those status games. So you may be Elon Musk, but then you look around and you see somebody else has a bigger yacht than you do.
Yeah.
And so they have more stuff. And so now you're playing that status game. And then you achieve more stuff. And then you look around and you see, well, somebody's got a better, happier family than I do. Now I feel bad about myself for not having that family. There is an endless supply of status games out there that if you are always comparing yourself, you will always be comparing yourself.
Yes, exactly. It's a bottomless pit. It'll never be enough. By the way, that's also why they're so addicted to rushes of dopamine. So adventure seekers, they're essentially addicts in a much more aggressive form than ours. There's a wonderful book that came out 10 years ago by Frank Rich, who at the time was writing for the Wall Street Journal, called Richistan. And Richistan was the first book that I read that exposed me to the phenomenon that I then discover through coaching, which is that the more successful you are, the correlation with happiness becomes in the inverse. The less happy you are. The more anxious you are, the more depressed you are. By the way, this has been confirmed now by studies from Stanford, etc. We're more than twice as likely to be anxious and to be depressed. And the reason was exactly what you said. When you go into the $10 million category, suddenly you're surrounded by people with $100 million.
Yeah.
And that's a completely different game. You're no longer competing with the Joneses, you're competing with the Bezoses. And it's almost impossible to compete with the Bezoses, right? And so life becomes much, much more aggressive, and the maintaining of the appearances becomes much, much more aggressive. Why play that game? You know how to win that game? The fastest way is get out.
Yeah.
Leave the room.
So let's talk about that, because that is something I wanted to unpack with you too. I had this experience where I was running a half marathon, and it was the first half marathon I had run. And I trained and I knew the pace I wanted to run, and gun goes off, we start running, and I'm feeling great. And then I look at the clock, and I was trying to run, let's say, an 8:30 mile pace. I look at the clock, we're at 3 miles, and it says 21 minutes. And I was like, oh boy, that's 7 minutes. I can do that math. I'm running a minute and a half faster than my pace. And I'm like, I know I can't sustain this pace for the whole race. And so I was like, all right, I got to slow down. So I start to slow down, but everybody around me runs that pace. So all of a sudden, this sea of humanity starts rushing by me, and my ego kicks in, and I'm like, well, this isn't going to work either. I guess I'm just going to keep this pace until the wheels fall off. And as I was reading your book, I was like, oh, this is like what you're talking about is the same mistake, but in life.
Exactly.
And so I know what that I remember that feeling vividly of having everybody rush past me and that initial reaction of like, oh, no, I can't do this.
That wasn't your mistake.
I have to keep up.
What was the trigger? What was the fatal flaw? And by the way, that's going to be very revealing to every person who's identifying with this, who's listening. What was the moment?
The fatal flaw was starting too quickly.
It was looking at the clock.
Oh, yeah.
We keep score. And when we keep score, life is going to trample you, just like those nice other people. If you hadn't kept score, who knows what would have happened? You would have actually run your own race. The real game is to learn how to run your own race.
Yeah. But let's say, all right,
and then the race is just about fun.
I will take that. Nobody's ever made that comment before. I love it. I'm going to think about that. I want to go back to the reaction I had though, because I think it signifies that like stepping out of the race, you're still watching all those people go by. Just because you're like, I don't need money and fame anymore.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the rest of the world isn't jumping all over themselves to get money and fame. And you see that happening, especially most likely your in group, it all has is playing the same status game. And so your in group now is still doing that. So how do you...
It's nice to see your ego, isn't it?
Yeah. So how do people catch that ego and like rein it in? What are the steps? What's the process? Yeah. What's the journaling, meditation, like what is the prescription to start to get comfortable with the fact that I'm going to leave that race behind and I'm going to go find another race?
I'll teach you two ways. The first is in the case like yours. In a moment like yours, you are literally coming face to face with your ego.
Yeah.
Because it's an obvious moment, and it's like anytime I feel embarrassed by something or criticism really hurts me, I immediately remember who's in the room. It's definitely not me taking the blow. I'm not seeing life this way. I don't see myself as a person who now has to become more aggressive automatically. I know who's in the room. And in that moment, I know that my job is to speak to myself with great compassion. That's the first antidote, which is, it's okay. You came here to have fun. Isn't this fun? Aren't you having fun? Isn't this about the fun? Who cares who wins or loses? Have a good time. There are animals in the house. You came here to have a good time. Have a good time. And then I kick right back into what I actually am, which is a person who came here to have a great time. Mm. The second thing to do is to be aware even before that and to learn the mindfulness practices that will really take you through to the other side. The one I teach, my particular brand, I love the work by Byron Katie. I love Active Insight by Andrew Bernstein. Whatever you're familiar with and works for you, keep doing it. But here's mine. Mine is called the pause principle. It's just 3 steps. In a moment of challenge, and please don't worry, anybody alive today will experience one in the next 15 minutes. If you, I don't know, turn on Instagram or the news. And as you approach the moment of challenge, instead of doing your usual, which is reacting in some way, even reacting emotionally, just ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, is the problem, or is the way I'm about to react the bigger problem? The way you're about to react, spoiler alert, always the bigger problem. If it's uncollaborative, if it's with anger, it's with anything other than compliments and rainbows, it's the bigger problem. Number 2, and this is the question that changed my life. In case you don't detect the accent, I'm Israeli. The second question is, what else might be going on here? What else might be going on here? Once I started thinking what other ways there are to see something, I could come up with 5 in an instant, which already chills you out. It brings you into the calm zone. And then lastly, ask the question, what's the opportunity here? And you'll see that you've basically gone from there's only one way to react and it's tons of force to I've got at least 10 options here. And most of them are more fun than force. And hopefully that will always get you on through to the other side. When I discovered this, I wrote it down. laminated it, carried it around in my pocket. It really stopped me from doing my usual, which was to react fast and with force, which is a default.
Yeah.
And then I really started to move into just taking things easy.
When you said the mindfulness practice, I think when people say that, they often think of meditations, and you get people who are either like, yes, I love meditating. You get people who are like, oh, geez, not another meditation pusher.
Yeah.
But I think when I think of mindfulness and I think of meditation, I think there's a broader definition, which is a coming back to something. If I'm
Yes.
going to meditate on something, I'm going to come back to it, and I'm going to keep centering myself on a certain thought or a certain belief or a certain feeling. And I think that just that concept is very, very powerful. Like you said, you laminated it and you kept it in your pocket. I bet you were terrible at it at first.
I was unbearable.
Yeah. And it was, I bet things, you still flew off the handle. And then after the fact, you were like, oh, yeah, I have this laminated card in my pocket.
Like a couple of months into going into this, I got fired. Do you think I was like immediately, so what are the other ways to look at this?
Yeah.
This takes enormous discipline and practice. And that's why I love how you talked about mindfulness. Meditation, listen, it's phenomenal. If you like it, enjoy. My personal brand is watch Frasier and go to sleep. Literally, my meditation is actually for the stopping of the mind and the resetting of the mind. Mindfulness is injecting a pause, just a little moment of clarity to ground yourself so that you don't fly off the handle. That's really what mindfulness is. It's reflection. It's deep reflection and centering the self in a moment. And anybody can learn how to do this. It really just takes a lot of practice. There's no shortcut.
Well, one of the themes that has come out of this show on several episodes is the need to get your reps in to build any new skill or behavior. We're just not going to be good at a new thing that we've never done before. We have to do it again and 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 again, because like you said, like we're trying to build something new, and that just takes time. It takes reps.
I mean, all of us, essentially, we all think that our brain is a very rational, useful device, but it's not. First of all, it's a very large organ that uses enormous amounts of energy, so it relies on shortcuts. That's where all biases come from, right? And it's not designed to make us happy in any way or even look for happiness. It's designed to keep us alive. So if you start to understand that that's the default, you know that you're thinking fast by default. As Danny Kahneman, the late Danny Kahneman, said in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, the antidote is to think slowly. But this is not a condition with which we're born, just as I was not born with any athletic ability. But you can build towards this. Fun fact, I've been working out since I discovered Jane Fonda when I was 15 years old. P.S. Long time ago. Jane Fonda reference. And
shout out Jane Fonda.
Shout out to Jane Fonda, still killing it at 80. I've been working out ever since, almost every day. And I'm not particularly better, but I mean, I've definitely built a real resistance in training. And it's exactly the same thing with my mind. I literally became disciplined with my mind 10 years ago. And I also watch what information I feed my mind, just like I watch my diet. And the rest, as they say, is history.
I want to talk about happiness in a second, but one other topic I wanted to get to first, which is this concept of self-acceptance. And you've talked about this and you've been demonstrating it already here. What is self-acceptance and what is self-acceptance not?
So self-acceptance is not, let me just start with, yoga t-shirt slogan that's all about self-obsession and affirmations and all of that. They're cool, but they have nothing to do with self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is also not navel-gazing. This is really not a reflection of self and a braggadociousness or anything like that. Self-acceptance is essentially the opposite of all of these things. And most importantly, it's the opposite of self-confidence. Self-confidence is very dependent on what we have and what we look like at any given point in time. You already can see what the problems are with this. Number one, your achievements, your degree of appearance is not going to be upheld by you throughout your life. And number two, even worse, people will not agree, even when you're at the apotheosis of your creation, that it's actually good. So technically speaking, the second criticism or tragedy or differences befall you, self-confidence walks right out the room. In stark contrast, self-acceptance is replenishing and forever yours. It has no ceiling and it has no bottom. It's always yours. And it's defined by 3 hallmarks. The first is the ability to speak to yourself with compassion or forgiveness. My favorite example is if you have a typo in your newsletter, you do not immediately believe that you deserve to die. Believe it or not, there are enough people in my life and in my world who will say things like, how can you have that in a newsletter? They'll either fire people for it or they'll beat themselves up for it. This is absolute nonsense. To be able to speak to yourself with self-compassion is to say, it's okay. Nothing happened. No big deal. You'll figure this out. Life is long. Nobody noticed. And that's, by the way, the last one is the truth. The second is the ability to recognize your own humanity. Self-acceptance is acceptance of our own humanity. That means nobody is perfect. That's what humanity means. Not a single person, especially the ones who are lying all over LinkedIn, is actually perfect. 0 of them are that highfalutin. You know how I know? A lot of my clients are on there. A lot of my friends are on there. It's nonsense. It's a facade. And you aren't either. So just be okay with that. We will all age. We will all have good days. We will all have bad days. It's all good. And the third is, and this is, I think, the most important for men, the hallmark of self-acceptance is equanimity, also known as the state of chill. Reactive state, anger, force, they're not chill. They can look like you've got it together, but you actually don't have chill. Real self-acceptance is to just be okay with things as they are, to be able to accept them and therefore navigate through them.
Is chill, your definition of chill, is it to be able to sit and not do anything?
No.
Or is it something different?
It's the ability to accept things as they are without resistance so that you can actually proactively solve through them.
Because
calm.
Yeah,
Chill
you
is
can
calm.
work really,
It's
really
not-
hard
Yeah, it's not asleep.
in chill.
It's chill. Most of us are motivated competitively by anger. We can and we will, which means we will use as much force to get back into the arena as possible. When you drop that, you can actually solve things proactively. You will think slowly. You will have a different reaction. By the way, people with very high equanimity factors in studies have been shown to bounce back much faster from divorce, much faster from difficulty in business, much faster from pretty much anything, because the state of chill actually shortens the amount of time of proper reaction. Reactivity usually brings with it a lot of chaos, and so makes the process much longer. Again, it's antithetical to the way that we think. It's counterintuitive, but it actually works much better. So you really want to cultivate this. And the way to cultivate this is to genuinely learn how to like yourself. Now, there are a lot of processes in my book that actually are bringing you to this, but I just want to start with the ones that we outlined. And the best one is the first one, which is learn how to speak to yourself with compassion and forgiveness. Learn how to speak to yourself in a way that is chill. You can start by practicing on small children. I think it's really hard to be mean to a baby, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you start to remember,
I took a bunch of
actually
notes for myself on that in your book. And you have the picture of yourself as a little kid.
Yeah.
I actually was thinking about that last weekend. I had some time alone and I was just thinking about myself as a little kid and giving that kid a lot of grace. And I think that's a really powerful visual for us.
Yeah. I just always remind myself I would never speak that way to a baby, so I would never speak to myself that way.
Yeah. We all have that little kid inside of us.
Yeah. And all of perfectionism, I think, is just you being a bully to a baby, to a defenseless child inside your mind who's like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Of course, after a while, we start to surrender to it. Nobody can take it for very long. It's just like your pace in that half marathon. After a while, your body's just going to go, nope.
Yeah.
I don't care how much pickle juice you're going to throw at me. We're done here.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about anger.
Okay.
Because I had a lot of questions on this in the book. You said we need to break up with anger.
Yeah.
I am somebody who can be tripped up by anger and I can feel that flare. And I have gotten pretty good at suppressing that down, but it's still there. And your concept of like break up with it's one thing to choose a better reaction when you feel anger. It's another thing to not have the anger show up in the first place.
Yeah.
So I would love, if you would, to unpack a little bit more of how you help people break up with anger.
Well, the first thing I'll say is you have to do it. Anger is actually righteousness. Righteousness is the need to be right or the need to feel in control. Most of us do this as basically a reflex to death. right?
Yeah.
The illusion of immortality. We are not aware of it. It's a subconscious thing. The founder and executive usually has a behavioral archetype of high D, high I. Not always in the DISC assessment profile. That means high dominance or high drive and high influence. Very, very high energy people, usually quite extroverted and motivated, whether you like it or not. Most people don't love hearing this because they prefer the word passion, usually motivated by anger. And that means a need to demonstrate their results, a need to demonstrate and prove themselves, right? This is coming from anger. Now, when you activate anger, you subconsciously activate anger on the other side too. In other words, force begets more force against you. If you really want to live an easy life, a comfortable life, an unconditional life, a life that's more about love and happiness, you have to surrender this because you'll be fighting all your life against everything. You will essentially be resisting reality. Reality will trip you up again and again. Please take it from an Israeli. You'll really be resisting reality instead of actually being able to sit with it calmly and really work towards resolving it. And if not finding peace for everyone, at least finding peace within yourself. I like to tell people that you have no idea how much power you have until you really are surrendered to peace. Now, how do you do this? For many people, it will be a little bit more aggressive because anger is actually a mask. It's masquerading emotion. It is covering up the real emotion, which is grief or shame. In many cases, this will not come out as classical anger. It will come out as one of the many addictions. Now, some of them are not listed as known addictions by the APA, but shopping, drinking, pills, 7 hours on Instagram, all of them, addiction. They're all suppression of anger, the inability to deal, which makes you actually decide not to feel. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. If you start to understand that suppressing it is not the way, the next level is going to be to start to work through it and to ask yourself a different question. Do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? I think most Israelis want to be right. I can speak on behalf of my own people. And I think a lot of people today, outraged by algorithms, that's what they're doing, by the way. That's why they're so effective. That's why everybody's addicted. People really love rage.
Yeah.
They prefer it to no emotion, right?
Yeah.
So they're just buying into that. Your decision has to be, I'd rather be happy than right. And that's when you're going to go on deep dives through mindfulness and hopefully through real coaching and an inner journey to break with that pattern. That takes a while, just like anything else. Took a while for me to understand that it was anger.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big pussycat. I never look angry. But it is. It is. And once that starts to dissipate, everything becomes just way easier.
Yeah. You made the comment about, well, I don't know if you said this, but this is what I heard, that we don't think it's anger, or we think we don't like anger, but actually most people do like feeling angry.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the reason you see so much of it, I think, is because people are like, what? I don't like being angry. Like, it's just that there are these people out there. And it's like, no. We do like to feel angry because feeling angry makes us feel powerful. Anger is a fuel and it burns really, really bright. And you can do some amazing things on anger. You see people do it all the time.
It's right.
It's not that sustainable over time, though, and it's going to burn you out. So there's all kinds of reasons to let it go and shift the way that you're talking about. But I think it's interesting to look at, I'm the same way. I'm sure you're the same way. Like, feeling really angry makes you also feel really powerful, and feeling powerful is a good feeling.
And you just went back to status. Have you ever watched the Tony Robbins TED Talk, Why We Do What We Do?
I'm not sure. I've listened to some of his stuff, really, but I can't remember if it was that one. I highly
recommend you take 10 minutes out of your life and just watch this. It's based on the Jungian model of our hierarchy of emotional needs. The second emotional need, which is a very low emotional need, is the need for significance or status. And that need comes from the first need being threatened, certainty. Our need to know that we are safe, that our family and position are safe. Once that's rattled, we move into action. Essentially, anger is a slightly higher emotion than the one that it's actually came before it, which is powerlessness.
Yes.
It gives you an illusion of power. How significant are you going to feel if you're pointing a gun at somebody instead of them somehow threatening your livelihood.
Yeah. It
You'll
artificially
immediately feel
ramps you
powerful.
up that status curve.
Exactly. Now,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it is never good to use violence. That never ends well. And that's why I always say anger can fuel enormously, but it will only work to a certain point. And now you're starting to really explain the founder journey or the executive journey or that amazing phrase that you brought in by Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. You start to see that that fuel is finite. It burns out. Competitive energy is combustible. And by the way, for anyone out there who's married, you're going to find out real fast that combustible energy, including sex, is finite. And then what? Then what? So you really want to start climbing up the ladder. And here's what's next. You have to start tolerating uncertainty. You have to really learn how to condition yourself to really deal with uncertainty in a way that is equanimous and chill. Big tax bill? Yay. Unforeseen glitch in the business? We're down. My foot's broken? Let's keep going. The next one is going to be really becoming obsessed with love and then growth and then contribution beyond yourself. This is the process of becoming nobody. And it's really the process of becoming everybody.
Have you seen Jocko Willink's video Good?
My God, you are full of fantastic references.
So do you know who Jocko is? He's
No.
he's come up on this podcast. He's a Navy SEAL
Oh, yeah.
who now teaches leadership and has a very famous podcast. There's a video of him. He's just one of the most intense human beings on the planet. But he talks about this philosophy where, and they put it to music. It's great. But he tells a story about how he had this guy who would come to him and complain. And eventually the guy came and he was like, I already know what you're going to say. And he's like, what are you going to say? He's like, you're going to say good. Because every time the guy would come complain, hey, we didn't get the equipment we wanted. Good. We get more time practicing with the old equipment. Hey, the budget didn't come through. Good. We get to be more creative with the dollars we have. Like there's always a way to reframe some of that stuff. And it's
very correct. And I ended shamelessly with the words, I pray for a shitstorm. And I also tell you without any modicum of embarrassment that when my clients come to me with a shitstorm, I always say, great. Now we can get down to business. Yeah. Things are starting to break open. You're going to have to confront what you're going to have to confront, of course, short of true grief.
Yeah. My wife, who knows me, got twisting my camera, got me a framed picture that says good, and I have it in my office here.
Fantastic. Yeah, good. Yeah. Congratulations. You're going up a level.
Talk about ego. So I have that on one side, and on the other side, I have, you can't read it because the text is so small, but it's the man in the arena.
Speech. Yeah,
so
exactly.
Those are my two ego checks. We'll link to those for anybody who doesn't know what either of those are. They're great.
No Brene Brown and Teddy Roosevelt fans out there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that on anger. I'm going to go back and re-listen to that. It's interesting. So I have two little kids, and I find myself, now that they're getting older and getting more agency, there's more uncertainty in my life and unpredictability. And I find that there's like just that initial trigger, and I'm like, okay, that's not the father I want to be. So how do you work through that?
You find your dad coming through?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what I said about the ego. You just learn when to employ it and when not to employ it. That's pretty much it. In other words, discipline has to be selective for it not to actually run your life, for you to not move into systemic thinking where that's the only thing.
It's worth maybe making a comment. I jotted this down earlier. You were talking about you can either do coaching or you can have trauma in your life. And you were like, do the coaching because it's more fun. It is, but that's not to mean that it's not painful too.
Oh, of course. I think that's a Trojan horse, but don't tell them. Don't scare them. No, it's super fun. All we do is reference Seinfeld and have a fantastic time together.
Yeah. In reality,
yes, it's brutal.
They're both pain, right?
It's brutal,
it's just the question of, do you choose the pain?
Yeah.
Or does the pain come at you?
Yes.
And if the pain comes at you, you never know where it's going to come from. And, it's going to catch you off guard. You're not going to be ready for it. If you choose the pain, it's still going to be painful. Like that, the cognitive dissonance of looking at my reaction with my kids and going, that's my fault. It's not their fault. That is hard. It's hard. I haven't talked about it in a while, but there was a time where I was really mindful when there'd be a tension in my life with another person. I would sit and I would think, how much of this is my fault? Or where is this my fault? And almost always I was able to come up with something. And every time I came up with something, it was mentally painful to admit, you know what? that's right. I was the problem there, and
Yeah.
I can get better. But that is how you get better. It's the only way you get better. And so you either can choose to do that painful work, or you can just have life be painful.
Exactly. I mean, the confrontation with the reality, which is life is not happening to you, it's happening for you.
Hmm.
And you're
You're
collaborating
great
with
with the
it is
reframes.
the ultimate realization. And it really has to just start with a decision. I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't good enough for me. Because otherwise, believe me, something ungoverned by you will happen. That's not being like witchy or anything. It's literally how the forces of the universe work.
Yeah.
After a while, it's not sustainable anymore. It's just like, when you lie, you will get caught. It's just a question of time. So you have to just choose to uphold the lie forever, or you can decide to come clean. Trust me, coming clean will be way better than the world finding out. That's how this works.
All right. Last few minutes, let's talk about happiness.
Yeah.
So, what do people get wrong about happiness, and what is it really?
What people get wrong about happiness is that it's an abstract thing. It's not an abstract thing. It's a concrete thing that can easily be defined. It's academically been defined for more than 30 years now, and I'll be really happy to share about it. But the most important thing is we don't even aim at it. Everybody says that all they want is happiness. Oh, especially with children. I just want them to be happy. My mom has forever said, I only want you to be happy. And I know my mom super well. And she happens to want happiness in the form of husband, money, prestigious job,
Yeah.
and look nice at events. This is her understanding of happy. I really do love my mother, but that's it. They want you to be safe. They want you to be safe. They want you to be good. They want you to be right. They want you to do okay. As a result of that, again, because by the time we're 7, we've picked up pretty much every cue we need, we understand what good really means. And we understand it to mean safe. And as a result of that, we are aiming at money and power in some form, or money and status in some form, instead of aiming at happiness. And we start to then evaluate what really lights up our lives versus that which will give us power and status. We all know people who are much more interested in accolades and safety and titles and how much the business is earning and what my spouse looks like than actually how they feel inside the relationship and how they feel inside the business. And if those feelings are incongruent, it is on you to make that decision to change. And here's what you will aim for. You will aim for happiness. Now, since Martin Seligman self-appointed himself the father of positive psychology, and that's a real thing that he did. He's at Wharton, at UPenn and Wharton. They started to really look at psychology not only from the lens of neurosis and psychosis, but also to study people who have really grateful, really happy lives. And what they found was there are actually 3 types of happiness. One is hedonic pleasure. Hedonic pleasure is literally what it sounds like. It's fun and pleasure, Hollywood happiness, zings of dopamine. It's like me on a yacht with George Clooney receiving jewelry right now. Super fun afternoon. Unfortunately, in studies, like lasts as long as a sugar high, right?
Yeah.
The second is flow. A state of flow is a state you enter and exit. So it's not sustainable happiness, but it is genuine happiness. And it usually doesn't look like happiness. It doesn't look giggly and like Karen on a yacht with George Clooney receiving jewelry, right? It's when I'm reading a book, I'm so engrossed in it. My husband loves to fish. What a weird hobby. Super happy. He doesn't look happy, but he's super happy. He's content, right?
Yeah.
And flow is a state you can reach again and again. And then there's real happiness, also known as meaning. Again, sounds like an abstract term. I'm about to make it real for you. Happiness consists of only 2 things: service and appreciation. Only 2 things you really want to cultivate in your life for a life of meaning, for a life that doesn't ever feel aimless again, ever feel restless again, is number 1, whom do you serve? Truly serve. And number 2, what do you appreciate? And if you really start to condition yourself to appreciate what is good about this, good, Jocko, shout out. Or you start to really serve with your life. As any person who's ever been in the military knows, you are serving with your life, and it is an honor to serve. That is a new state of reverence, and it changes all of life. That's happiness.
How do we cultivate more of a service mindset when the status games we've been playing have been exclusively selfish?
It's by discovering that what you serve. All of us do. Take a moment. Chapter 5 in my book takes you through lots of exercises because this is a little complicated, but it's beginning to serve purpose rather than legacy. Purpose is what you would do naturally if nobody paid you. And we all have that. We all know what we're obsessed with. We all know what we would do if nobody paid us. And if you start cultivating that flow, the rest will come.
Yeah. So one last question I have for you, because you talk in the book about the second mountain.
Yeah.
Which is, everybody climbs the first mountain only to realize they're climbing the wrong mountain. And then they spend the rest of their lives climbing the second mountain. I think that's good, but I think there's this inherent fear in a lot of people that if they give this up, they have to go climb a whole different mountain again. And I have wrestled with this myself before the coaching that I've gotten, but does it have to be a different mountain?
No.
Or can we just climb our mountain a different way?
No, exactly. I like to say, if you inherently suppose that it's a different mountain, different faces, different places, but unless you change, what you're going to get is exactly the same. Even if you switch careers, even if you switch spouses, as many people have found, if you don't fix the neurosis, you're really climbing the same mountain again. You're still on mountain number 1. The analogy, by the way, comes from David Brooks's book, The Second Mountain, and which I enjoyed until the middle. And the other way to do it is the way Jerry Seinfeld did it. Jerry Seinfeld I'm obsessed with Seinfeld. I just love the guy. I love the show. I'm still, I think, stuck somehow in 1998 when he left us. Jerry Seinfeld at the age of 45 had an epiphany. It was, I'm at the apotheosis, I'm the peak of my career. I have more Porsches than any one person should have access to even.
Yeah, he had one for every day of the year.
Now what? Literally. And he literally thought, is that all there is? And he said, I was really enjoying all of my issues. Openly, he loved dating 7,000 people. And he really enjoyed all the cars. And he really enjoyed all of the success. Is that it? Is that it? Did not really radically reframe his life. It just added meaning to his life. That's when he meets Jessica. It's when he has children, then cats, then dogs, and really evolves his career to the next level with a different degree of relationship to the career. That's the second mountain. The reframe is literally within ourselves, which changes everything we see.
Yeah. And he's still doing the same thing he's always been doing. Still
70
doing
years
stand-up.
old. Can you believe it?
Yeah. Still doing it at a high level.
And looks like he genuinely likes his life.
Yeah. Keren, this has been a fantastic conversation. I am going to have to go back and listen to this again because there are a bunch of nuggets in here that I need to really internalize and be mindful about and keep coming back to. Is there anything we haven't said or any final thought that you have that you want to share before we sign off?
I want everybody to just really walk away knowing that you can be easy on yourself because you're doing way better than you think. And most of us don't give ourselves a single moment of that grace, any overachiever. Just be easy on yourself. You're a good parent. You're good at your job. You know what to do. You know how to do it. You can do this.
You can do it, everybody.
Hey folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.